So, quick introduction. I am Sarkis. I'm going to be talking about growing bigger studios. Now, the title sounds kind of strange. Honestly, it was something that I just said, oh, maybe that's a good topic to talk about at one point. And then it kind of got stuck. And I decided, why change it? It's the first thing that came to my mind. So, quick introduction. I'm getting used to the clicker. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, I'm Sarkis. I am a VP of product at Roblox. My username is Sarkis. One of the things I realized in my life is that I was named before I had a say in it. I was a baby. So I decided, well, hold on. What's up with this? So I decided to change my name in the part way through, but I still go with both names. So you can call me Deepak, and I wouldn't be offended in any meaningful way. But I would be offended in non-meaningful ways. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So for all of my conversations or topics or presentations, I always start with a quote. Someone asks me, well, what is your quote about? So my quote today is, all things need to grow. That's my quote. So as we grow in life, so does our vision and that we want to do. So we have to grow. Time doesn't stop for anybody. You're going to grow. So you're either going to grow one way or the other, right? You're going to grow old. Most of you, I've known you for 7 years, 8 years, 9 years. I've been with the company 8.5 years. I didn't have a beard when I started at the company. Now I have a beard. It's grown quite a lot. It's super convenient. I don't have to shave every day, right? But it's growing, and I'm waiting to see when does it stop. Now, growing your studios is the exact same thing. And not like my beard, I mean growing. You got to grow, right? And raise your hand quickly. How many of you were at Robbie's talk on the tools? Like 4 people? All right. So this topic is not going to be about the product. The product itself is getting more and more collaborative. And I strongly encourage everybody to check out that talk on the video, so that you kind of see the product side of things changing so that it supports teams, right? This topic is more about what do you need to consider when you're thinking about growing your studios. We had an external panel from the devs who are trying to do this right now, and you learned a lot from them, but I'm going to give you the philosophical things that you need to consider as you try to grow your business. So for agenda, we'll kind of go for platform growth and community. We'll talk about the need for speed game. No, I mean, not need for speed, the game. We're going to talk about need for speed, as in you need to produce things fast, and a bunch of other stuff that I don't want to read off the slide. All right, so let's talk about platform growth and community. So first, Roblox as a platform has truly grown. So when I started at the company, we had a few million monthly active players, and we have kind of grown to about 100 million. And Dave mentioned this in his keynote. We have grown to 100 million monthly active players as of this last month. This has been incredible, and a large part of this is fueled by your efforts by building the best experiences on Roblox, right? So the players are enjoying that, and that's why they're coming to the platform. Now, as the platform grew, so does it's grown across the globe. It's not just in the US. We have more international monthly active players now than it's about 70% of our monthly active players come from international and not just the US. This is incredible for us. Now, kind of jumping ahead for Need for Speed here, it was a game that was released in 1999. No. So we talk about developer competitions. What's the Need for Speed about? It's about the fact that as a marketplace grows, so does the competition in the market, right? Marketplaces are about two sides, the buyers and the sellers. You are the sellers. You're making content, but the number of you that are going to be making content, that's going to be interested in making the content, is increasing day by day. So it becomes very important for you to kind of think about, how can I produce my content? How can I make my game faster? How can I reach my audiences faster? Speed matters. So this is like an image. Originally, I had the Ford assembly line image here. It's like old school, where they figured out the assembly line for a car, assembling the car. But then we decided, well, that's not going to connect with you. So we kind of put in a much more modern packaging image here. But the point remains the same. You need to understand that content needs to be produced really fast to retain player engagement. If your game is not updating the content fast enough, it's going to lose steam, and it's going to be the players engage. The players only have a finite amount of time. You can't increase the amount of time they play necessarily, and they're going to go to another game. And scaling your team is the fastest way to produce content fast. And some of your fellow developers are already scaling. So this graph particularly represents the fact that in Jan, I think Robbie covered this in his slide as a pie chart, Jan 2019 to May 2019, we are seeing the number of teams that are making content as teams is actually increasing. The 2 to 4s are increasing, the 1s are decreasing. I actually expect this to continue to decrease a lot on the 1 segment because you're not going to be able to produce content fast enough to keep up. So, okay, so I'm interested in growing my team now. Sarkis, what do I do? What do I need to do? What are the things that I need to consider when it comes to growing my team? Some of you are already doing this, as I mentioned. So you have a bunch of teams, you have different people doing different things. Raise your hand if you're already a part of a team. All right, so 33%. I'll give it about 33%. That's pretty good. I did math with my eyes. Now, so let's consider. So this is going to resonate with you, but not for the rest of this, right? So a typical game team is composed of programmers, artists, designers, testers, producers. Producers are kind of people keeping the schedule together. It's a very valid and valuable task when it comes to larger teams. The bigger the scale, the more the need for specialization. Now, as Roblox, the company, when I started at Roblox, there was about 20 or so people at the company, and we all did lots of things. Each one of us did lots of things. But as we grew to the company, there are about 500 people today, each of our jobs have become more specialized, right? And so as you scale your team, the roles are also going to get more specialized. At first, we're going to do a bunch of things, but more and more of those things are going to get specialized. And so who do you need? One size does not fit all. Each game team is different and is composed of different talents. So because it starts with you as the person who's going to reach out to another person, you need to know what your talent is. If you don't know what your talent is, you don't know how to kind of connect with other people to figure out what they need, right? And have a conversation and form a team. Originally, I was going to have an image about me trying to wear like this small T-shirt, but my marketing team said, no, we're not going to do that. So, however, one of the things at Roblox we talk about a lot, this is super important, this is intangible, you don't think about this until you kind of like go through the motions. People who are running companies or teams right now, you know this very, very clearly. You have to have an aligned vision with your team. Adding more people and growing the number of people in your team is not going to work. You have to have people who are bought into the notion of what game you're trying to make. Otherwise, it's going to get very, very hard. So the kind of the example gives you the notion that things are out of order. One way to think about this is, I'll frame this as a question. How many of you have met with your friends or team members and have had a conversation about and listing all the things you agree on? Raise your hand. Okay, good. That would be crazy, right? Nobody says, I agree with this, I agree with this, I agree with this, I agree with you, I agree with you. Nobody does this, right? Because you actually don't do. Most of your time is actually spent talking about things you're not agreeing about. And this matters. So if the amount of disagreement between you and your team member is a lot, you're going to spend most of your time just talking about the fact that you don't agree. And this is going to be you're not going to be productive, right? So this becomes super, super, super important to understand and evaluate how do you find a team member who's actually aligned with your vision, and for them to also do the same thing with you. And lastly, complementary strengths of individuals is very, very important. You have to find people who are good at what you're not good at, right? If you're a scripter, you have to find people who are good at building. If you find the same type of people that you're already good at, then you're going to have a homogeneous team that you're not going to be able to move fast. You're actually going to move slower for the most part. So let's talk about the evaluation. So how do I kind of think about how do I evaluate my team? How do I find people? Now, during the keynote, Justin, head of developer community, kind of mentioned the idea that we're going to look at a recruiting pool where we're going to help you find people, right? There's going to be a product. more details to come. So you know that there is ways to reach out to people. Today, colloquially speaking to a lot of you, it looks like most of your team members you have found by either playing games together, speaking on the developer forums, or meeting them at RDC, in fact. In fact, I had lunch with one group where they met literally at the RDC 3 years ago, right? So this is great. This is acting as a place for you to find people who have relevant tastes and aligned vision, and you're building stuff together, but we need to do more of this. And for you to be able to figure out whether you're going to be able to work with that other person, you need to know how to evaluate whether this is going to be a good fit or not. And this is really, really hard. So as I mentioned before, you have to evaluate your strengths and weaknesses. If you're a scripter, find creative talent to partner with you. It's a simple example, but it's an example that kind of has to go a long way. You have to think about what you need to achieve your vision. Sometimes your vision requires you to find other scripters. You need to do that, right? So even if you're a scripter, I've heard people trying to build MMOs. That's amazing. That's amazing. We want to help you. We are trying to build tools that allow your team to scale. We want people with small team to build a very large game. Today's top games are made by teams of 100, 200, 300 people, right? We're trying to empower you to do the same with about 20 or 30 people. And so, but it also means that you have to think that, to fulfill my vision, I need more people. And you need to acknowledge that you need the people, and then you need to talk to people to find them, right? And second part is think about things that you can grow easily. There are stuff that's easier to grow in content. Just for example, 3D models, images, levels are easier to grow fast, right? It's much harder to say, I'm going to grow my code base. I'm just going to pump out lines of code. And the more lines of code I have, the better my game is. Hopefully nobody is thinking that. It's not, right? But some things are easier. The more if your level has more level of detail to it, if your city, for example, if you're building a city game and your city looks richer and better, you're going to beat out your competitors, right? So it's easier to think about how do you kind of empower your team to create those kind of things where your game simply looks and functions better. Some parts are a lot harder. If you don't have your core gameplay figured out, scaling the core gameplay by adding more people is not going to work. Because that's the morning talk kind of touched upon the notion where you start with the feel. If you add more people, it'll kind of actually push you towards adding more mechanics. Because your people need things to do, and then they will add more mechanics, and that's just not going to work. So, okay, so I've kind of figured out what I need to do. I kind of figured out that I need to do this. I see that Roblox as a platform is growing. I see that the competition in the platform is increasing rapidly. So what do I need to do to find out that they can actually be a good fit? How do you not waste too much time trying to find more and more people? It's a simple checklist, right? This is in the industry. We have this very ironed out interview process. We spend a lot of time thinking about how to interview people, but it all starts with simple things. Samples of their work. What have they done? Can they show it? Is it a 3D model? If they're a builder, can they show the build stuff that they've built? If it's a scripter, can they show something that they've built? Right? Natural alignment. Do they want similar things to you? Right? There are some common examples I can give you about where two different people kind of came together to form a team. One of them wanted one thing, the other wanted something else, and then they'll actually build a team, build a game that'll be neither. It's like you went to play an open world RPG and there's a match 3 game in it because someone was very passionate about a match 3 game. And you're going to spend, again, a lot of time trying to kind of push your game into the right line there. The last one is positive outlook. A lot of us don't think about this. A lot of us have blind spots. Okay, but here's an example. Let's say that you're having a conversation. Every time you say, hey, can we do this? The other person says, oh my God, that's so hard. First time, you're like, okay. By the 10th time, you're like, oh my God, when does this stop? By the 100th time, you can't do it anymore. right? Every time if somebody groans whenever you say something, it's going to be very, very hard for you to work with that individual. So it goes both ways. You have to have a positive outlook. When things are very, very hard, it's more and more important for you to be positive, to push things through, right? Because if you're not positive, you're actually going to like send the negative message to your team, and the team is going to take that negative message and they're going to work on stuff that you don't want. Okay? So you've evaluated. Now let's talk about what are the things that you kind of need to watch out for. So you need to scale your processes, and you need to think about common pitfalls. Whatever process you're following as a one-person team or a two-person team is not going to work for a 10-person team. So you have to think about, how do I create that environment where people can work together? Hopefully the tool supports you, as I mentioned, right? So the studio is going to get better and better over time. And how do you kind of figure this out? So first, you need to think about scale. You need to set up your structures for scale. The image, for example, represents a very common technique in the game industry called gray boxing. So gray boxing is a technique where you just put a bunch of gray boxes together. It's clear that the level is not final, but it helps you to kind of play with the level. And if you do this, your artists and the 3D builders could continue to make that level better while you focus on the actual gameplay. This is kind of, now you're scaling, right? So you have to think about, how do I enable team members in my team to kind of work independently, because that's the whole point of scaling, and how do you kind of set up the game so that you can move fast. And another example is, you have 3 scripters, your 3 scripts, but then you're writing everything into a single script. Now this is again a problem. You're not going to be able to scale. Now consider other processes. So this is we can talk more about this. Come find me after this, right? So consider processes that's used in the software industry as a standard for your process to make things scale. Daily stand-ups, scrums, hard deadlines, right? Deadlines are super, super important. How many of you know about Duke Nukem Forever? I'm curious. That game was in development hell for, I think, like decades or something. And it was because they had no deadline. They started out with like, we're going to make an awesome game. And they literally made it for so long that they had to rename their game Duke Nukem Forever, because it took forever to get out. By the time it was so bad that nobody played it, right? So the market left, your game is completely outdated, you're not going to be a success. Now you wasted all this time. Now I'm not making that game a totem pole, but it's a common mistake that people make, not having hard deadlines. And if you don't have hard deadlines, you just can't be successful. So it's very easy to kind of get into the loop of, I'm just trying to figure this out, I'm going to like just work on it for a while. Do not scale too fast, right? I'm talking about scaling. I've talked about how do you kind of like build your team. But scaling too fast is a thing. Don't do it. Some people have tried this. Most of the time, it doesn't work, where you just say, I'm going to add as many people as possible because I can afford to, and then it is not going to work. And secondly, to scale your team, you need a business model that actually supports them. Right? If you don't have the money, how are you going to support them? So you're gonna give them a percentage of your game, but then it's going to get harder and harder for you to hire people. This is very hard. So you have to think about, how am I going to do this? Now, the good news is Dave announced this, which is awesome. We're going to try to figure out how we can pay for you when you're creating engagement on the platform, right? Which is really good. But you still need to think about it. So here I will give a couple of call out for some of the features we have. You all use developer products. You all use game passes. We are thinking of ways where you can leverage subscriptions better. And there is VIP servers, which have served some of you very, very well. And I'll kind of leave this slide at the end, where every person and team is unique. It's very hard to kind of generalize and say, this is what works. There are common philosophies that you have to follow, but every person and team is unique. And you have to customize things to your needs and culture. And you have to develop a business model that allows you to scale. And lastly, I'll leave this thought. I just hope you guys can reiterate this. If there's one thing that you walk out of here is, remember, alignment and culture are paramount. That's what's going to help you scale. That's what, like, there is lots of, you all have cool ideas. You all know Roblox Studio very well. You're very smart. You can figure out the scripting part well. You can find the algorithms that need to make your game work. But people coming together and making something that's better than what they can is very, very hard. And you have to think that alignment and culture are paramount. And that's what I want you guys to walk out with. And lastly, I'll also finish with the quote: "The way we do culture is the way we do things around here." Right? And this is common philosophy. So for example, in Apple, design comes first, right? That's their culture. Like that's how they look at it. At Roblox, we spend a lot of time talking about performance. For example, we never release features that'll make performance worse. It's very easy for us to give you a better looking game that makes your performance worse in multiple devices, lots and lots of devices, but we don't do that, right? That's a fundamental culture for us. So knowing that kind of principles helps us make decisions that are consistent. Okay, that's it. Well, thank you for your time, and I got 4 minutes for you to ask questions. Oh, Luke. Yes, I can repeat your question, so go ahead.
Just wanted to know you had some diagram on the second last slide. What was going on with that diagram?
So this diagram, you're talking about this.
Yeah.
So this is like a standard business diagram that tries to explain, to kind of keep your eye on the ball. So when you're trying to make a game, I think one of the things that we do is we get tunnel visioned into like doing what we like. It's very, very common to do this. Right? Like you say, oh, I like to do this. I just think it'll work, right? So you have to have a clear idea of like, what's the value proposition? Why do the users want to play my game? So it's not just what you like. It's also like why you think the other people, the players will like it. You have to think about your revenue model, and then you have to think about like, how does the circle complete itself by the value chain? So it's a standard business, like an MBA diagram. But ultimately, what it's trying to get at is that you have to make sure that you're always looking out for what value you're creating for your players, and how does that kind of feed back into your game, and how does it make it better.